This lesson is a lesson about theme for fourth graders, and it uses Pixar shorts to introduce the idea of theme to students in a context they may be more familiar or comfortable with. And then once they've learned it in this context, they can then apply the idea while reading. So the objective of my lesson would be the students can describe in 1 to 2 sentences their interpretation of the theme of a video, giving evidence to support their idea. So if I were teaching this lesson in real life, I would introduce myself, state some expectations for the lesson. I would say, make sure you raise your hand if you would like to answer a question or ask a question. I would say, make sure you're showing me that you are paying attention by looking forward and looking at me when I'm talking. And then for the introduction of the lesson, I would start with a short discussion, and I would ask the students, what do we get out of reading a story, a fiction story? So I would call on a few students, and this activity would mainly be to pique their interest, get them thinking about why they read a story. And then as the conversation continued, I would make sure the conversation progressed towards learning something from a story or trying to figure out why an author might write a story or maybe being inspired by a lesson from a story. After that short discussion, I would give the purpose statement, which would be highlighting it right here. I would say today we are going to start learning about a concept called theme. A theme in a story is a big idea that the author wants to communicate throughout the story. It is important to learn how to identify a theme so that we know what idea the author is trying to communicate to us as readers. So after that introduction, I would start the lesson. And I actually did teach this lesson when I was student teaching. So I do have an example of an anchor chart that I made for the lesson, which is here. So the anchor chart, I would show the students the anchor chart and which kind of defines what theme is. So theme is the author's message, a universal lesson, the big idea, usually stated in 1 to 2 words. And if I were teaching it, I would kind of explain what those things meant. And then I think it's really important to give non-examples. So at the bottom here, I have theme is not usually stated. It is not the topic, so it wouldn't be something like birds or dogs. And it's not specific to the story. It can be applied in many different stories. And then I just gave a few common themes as examples down here at the bottom so that students can have an idea of what a theme might be. So after checking out the anchor chart, I would apply those themes to maybe a few stories that the students might have read. So for example, in the story Wonder, one of the themes is friendship because the characters overcome a lot of barriers to become good friends. Or in the Harry Potter series, um, one of the themes is good versus evil because the main character is fighting against evil throughout the whole series. So I would just give a few examples like that so that students could just relate to their own experience and their own reading and kind of understand how theme could be a part of that. Then I'll transition into watching the Pixar shorts by explaining that movies often have themes too. So if you can learn how to identify a theme in a movie, you can do the same thing while reading. I would tell them that before we started watching the Pixar shorts. So then I would play the short. The first one I have picked out is called Ciao Alberto. And before we watched it, I would tell the students that we're going to discuss the theme afterwards. So make sure to pay attention to what the characters are doing and saying, and try and think about what the video is trying to maybe teach you or what kind of theme they're trying to portray. So after we watch the video, It would be more of the guided part of the lesson where I'm giving my input and the students are giving their input as well. Um, so I would make sure that each student gave evidence for their ideas so that they're citing details from the video because that relates back to my standards and my objectives. And I'd make sure to communicate with the students that there could be many different themes within a reading or a movie, but as long as you have evidence to back it up, then your claim is valid. So I would emphasize that during the discussion. Then we would move on to the part where students would be able to show me that they have learned. So this would be more of an individual activity where we would watch another Pixar short called Boundin. And afterwards, students would have time to write 1 to 2 sentences explaining what they thought the theme of this short was and giving evidence from what the characters do, what they say, some kind of evidence that is a detail within the Pixar short. So after that, I would collect all of the sentences they wrote, and I would keep those to be a formative assessment because they're directly related to the objective. So I can check to make sure the students named a theme and gave evidence for what they thought the theme was. And then after that, the closure would also relate back to the objective. I would ask students if they wanted to share what they wrote about, and I would reiterate the fact that there can be more than one theme in a story, but you just have to have evidence from the text or the movie to back your idea up. So that would conclude the lesson. Throughout the lesson, I would just be assessing the students by asking what they thought the theme was. I could always refer back to the anchor chart if I thought I needed to reteach at any point throughout the lesson. And I also would collect their sentences as a formative assessment or an exit ticket at the end so that I could just see if they had met the objectives. So yeah, that is my lesson. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to show my lesson like this, and I hope you enjoyed it.